Hey there, BookTube, welcome back to my channel. We are back for day 3 of the hashtag DECAMORAMA. On day 3, Nephila is in charge and the group leaves the palace they've been staying in for another more beautiful, more ornate palace on the little hill. After resting up, they start to tell stories about people who use their resourcefulness to get something they want or to recover something they lost. Story 1 is told by Philostrato, and it's about a young man who pretends to be deaf and dumb in order to get a gardening job at a convent. These 2 young nuns seduce him, and then 2 other nuns catch wind of what's going on and they seduce him, and pretty soon all the nuns, including the abbess, are sleeping with the gardener. All of them thinking he's deaf and dumb so he can't tell on them. One night he realizes he can't keep up and he tells the abbess that he was deaf and dumb but he just got healed. And so she arranges for him to stay at the convent and continue gardening, but also to continue sleeping with all the women. And over time he fathers children with these nuns without having to bear any of the responsibilities of the relationships. Story number 2 is told by Pampania, and it's about a man who is working for the king taking care of the horses. And this groomsman falls in love with the queen and impersonates the king to get a night with her. When the king comes to visit the queen, he realizes that someone played a trick on them, and he figures it must be someone in the house. When the king finds out, he cuts off a piece of the groom's hair so he can identify him in the morning. But the groom is smart, and during the night, he cuts off the other men's hair too. So in the morning, when the king sees one man coming with short hair on one side, and then another man coming with short hair on the same side, and so he can't tell the identity, and he is forced to drop the investigation. Story number 3 is told by Philomena, and it's about a married woman who falls in love with another man who's friends with a friar. And she makes up a story about the gentleman stalking her, like she's in her house and he's just walking by with his, they didn't have binoculars back then, but he's walking by and he's just stalking her. So she complains to the friar. When the friar passes on the complaint to the friend, the man realizes that the woman just wants to make contact with him. And so through her repeated false complaints, the woman is able to send messages to the man until they're able to meet in person and begin a relationship. Story number 4 is told by Panfilo, and it's about a simple-witted, pious man who befriends a monk and brings this monk to his house. However, the monk is attracted to the man's wife and encourages the man to spend a lot of time in penance and going to mass and fasting. And while the man is in church fasting and praying, the monk is carrying on with the man's wife in his own house. Story number 5 is told by Elissa, and it's about a man who falls in love with another man's wife. This man, his name is Zima, and he has a horse, a palfrey, that the husband hears that he has. And the husband says, I want this horse. So Zima wants this man's wife, the man wants Zima's horse. So Zima offers to give him the horse if he will only let him speak to his wife. And the man says, sure, no problem. I'll give you sit down with my wife and you give me the horse. So when Zima gets a chance, he reveals his feelings to the woman. He tells her about how his heart just beats for her. And he gives her a code that if she ever wants to see him again, she should use that code. But when the husband is away, the woman uses the code. So she and Zima are able to spend time together. Next story is told by Fiammetta, and it's about a married man named Ricciardo who falls in love with another married woman named Catella. And Catella refuses to heed Ricciardo's advances. So he pretends to have fallen in love with someone else, not his wife, someone else, to get close to her. And when he does get close to her, he tells her that her husband is having an affair with his wife. And he tells Catella where they're planning their next rendezvous. So of course, Catella is jealous, green with envy. She goes there to catch them. But when she gets to the rendezvous spot, guess who's there? Ricciardo. And he's able to persuade Catella that he's still in love with her. And she says, well, okay, I love you too. Story number 7 is told by Emilia, and it's about a married woman who's having an affair with a man named Teldado. But one day, this woman, she ends the affair abruptly, and she refuses to see Teldado ever again. So Teldado is brokenhearted. He leaves the city, and he stays away for several years. But one day, he says, I'm going to go back home. So he puts on a disguise. He disguises himself as a religious man, a monk. and he returns to see why the woman broke up with him in the first place. But when he comes back, he sees his brothers wailing and crying. They're mourning because Teldado is dead. He's like, I'm not dead. Since Teldado is still disguised as the friar, he's able to meet with the woman, and she confesses that the previous friar made her break up with Teldado all those years ago, saying that she was sinning, and now she wishes she hadn't because look, Teldado is dead. At which point, Teldado reveals himself. Not the friar, I'm not the friar, I'm Teldado, your beloved. Anyway, Teldado is able to find the real murderers and get her husband out of jail. So Teldado is able to solve the mystery about the murders. He's able to even get the woman's husband out of jail. And he's able to resume his affair with her. Story number 8 is told by Loretta, and it's about an abbot who befriends this simple-minded man named Ferrando and proceeds to fall in love with Ferrando's wife. One day, the wife confesses to the abbot that she doesn't like being married to Ferrando because he's jealous and stupid, and that's a bad combination. So the abbot promises to cure her husband of his jealousy, but she must make herself available to him. Of course, at first, the wife, she doesn't want to do anything like that, but she becomes convinced, especially when the abbot gives her some jewelry. So the abbot drugs Ferrando so that he appears dead, and they bury him. And his wife and everybody is taken to mourning for Ferrando. Meanwhile, the abbot and one of his cronies remove Ferrando from the tomb and put him in a dungeon. And when he's revived, they tell him that he's in purgatory. And he has to do what they say so that he can have a chance to go back to his wife. For several months, Ferrando is in purgatory, and they're beating him and making him change his ways. Meanwhile, the abbot is upstairs in Ferrando's house with Ferrando's wife. Eventually, as things go, the wife got pregnant, and they told Ferrando that, look, your penance has finally been accepted. And they drugged him, put him back in the tomb, and when the drug wore off, Ferrando thought that he'd been resurrected. So he's able to return home, and he's no longer a jealous husband. But also, his wife has a father for her baby. Everybody thought the abbot performed a miracle to raise Ferrando from the dead. Story number 9 is told by the queen, and it's about a girl who falls hopelessly in love with a boy who doesn't love her back. First sign of trouble. The girl is the daughter of the doctor, and the boy is the son of the count. So one day when they're grown up, the king gets sick, and the girl, she hears that the king is sick. She goes and offers to cure the king, only if he will promise to give her a husband of her choosing. Of course, when the king gets well, she chooses the boy that she had a crush on, who's now the man, the count. And because the king made a promise, the count is forced to marry her. Happy ending, right? Not quite, because the count thinks the doctor is beneath him and he doesn't want to marry her, but he has to marry her. In fact, the count is in love with someone else. Ouch! So the wife, she finds out about the woman that the count is in love with. She's actually the daughter of a noblewoman who's living in poverty. And so this wife, she makes a deal with the noblewoman that if she can arrange for the count to come to visit and think that he's going to sleep with her daughter, she will make the count sleep with her instead, and then she will pay the noblewoman. So it's arranged. The count comes. He thinks he's sleeping with the girl he's in love with, but he's actually sleeping with his wife. And eventually, she gets pregnant. She has 2 sons that resemble their father identically. And when she tells the count that she has babies for him, he realizes that she's really smart, and he finally falls in love with his wife. In fact, the last story is told by Dioneo, and it's about a beautiful young girl who she just wants to serve the Lord. So she asks the monk, what should I do to serve the Lord fully? And the monk says, well, you have to wander. You have to leave home and you have to wander. So unbeknownst to her family, she leaves home, and another monk offers her a place to stay. Before long, however, the monk is so tempted by her youth and her beauty that he tricks her into sleeping with him by saying that the mating act is really them putting the devil in hell. Since the girl had left home to serve God fully, she's only too happy to oblige to put the devil in hell. And it's only when her father dies and she has to go home to claim her inheritance that the devil is no longer in hell. And that's it. That's day 3. The characters are all getting really raunchy at this point. The stories are getting really wild. Most of them about affairs and hypocritical church officials. And at this point, I can't imagine what we have in store for us on day 4. So I hope you'll come back tomorrow where I'll recap those stories. Thanks for watching. Leave me a comment if you're enjoying these stories as much as I am. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.